Daniel Pemberton, composer for Being the Ricardos. This is your third straight Aaron Sorkin film, and you also worked on Steve Jobs. But you're British, and I know I Love Lucy was not as big overseas as it is in America. So how familiar were you with the show and Lucille Ball?
I think one of my first sort of hesitations with this project at the beginning was, I said to Aaron, it's like, I'm familiar with this show, but it's not part of my DNA. Whereas I kind of think if you're American, it's such a important part of the kind of cultural psyche of the country in terms of what you've grown up and how the country perceives itself. But I was familiar with a bit in terms of like pop culturally, but not particularly. But I kind of feel that's, I try to use that to my advantage, because Aaron was always like, this is not about the show, this is about the people, this is about Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. And from that point of view, I came to film with no baggage. I came to this looking at what the story is in the script.
Mm-hmm. So in that sense, did you like watch any episodes at all, or did you want to stay away from it?
Yeah, as soon as I was, like any project I get on, as soon as I'm kind of like involved, or even if I'm not involved, I normally do a lot of like research, sometimes just for my own entertainment. Sometimes it's really useful. I watched a bunch of stuff online that I could find. I learned far too much about Lucille Ball's pretty amazing history in television, responsible for Star Trek, Mission Impossible, all these kind of crazy, huge things that still live on today. And which I always find is useful, just to kind of build some backstory to what you're writing. But, at the end of the day, the thing that's most important is really servicing the story in front of you and trying to do that in the best way possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also interesting because obviously the series is a comedy, and the theme song is so iconic, and it's in the movie, but the movie itself is a drama. And I really love the score because it's like a very classical orchestral score, and it's kind of moody and nostalgic. So what was your approach to it?
Well, Aaron gave me this note that he wanted like a beautiful love theme that goes wrong in a way that's got like melancholy and element of like bittersweetness to it. And we both, normally, like, this is my third film with Aaron, and at the beginning we always have a big discussion about like, right, how are we going to do this? What approach are we going to take? Because the thing that's great about his scripts and his films is they're always different. It's not like, here's another action film, or here's another car chase movie or something. Every film, you've got a very different world to enter, and I've tried to make every score on them very different. And with this one, we both agreed right from the start that we wanted a big, like, lush classic orchestral score, and I wanted it to harken back to that kind of era of the show and of Lucy, of that kind of golden era of what's seen as the golden era of Hollywood. And it was really important that, in terms of writing and recording, that it was done in a way that was similar to that kind of era. So that means, you've got all the musicians in the room, and it's all about that performance. It's not about like overdubs or digital trickery. It's about trying to really authentically capture one performance by a huge number of musicians.
Mm-hmm. And then you have that main like piano theme that reappears throughout the film. And I read that that took you a while to compose, right?
Yeah, it was kind of like we had these different ideas, and like the way scores would have been written, they still get written today, but fashions and trends change, and it's used to, as a composer, you play a tune on a piano, director would go great or thumbs down, and then you go to the recording stage, and that's the first time they hear it, and there's great things about that, and also bad things probably if you're a director. And technology has evolved. That means everything has to be mocked up, and you're sometimes a slave to that process as a composer. And if we all talk about that later, we're all very much, that's a big aspect of being a modern film composer. But I wanted to go back to that thing of just singing a piano and writing a theme that would work throughout the story. And so that's kind of where I started off. It was literally just singing a piano and fiddling around, trying to find chords, the melody that would all kind of capture this idea that Aaron wanted of this slightly doomed love story. I mean, I've always said it's like the film in some ways is a dream, and it's about Lucille's dream for this perfect life, this perfect house, the perfect husband, which only exists on the show. And the sad thing about it all was that, even though she had everything, she couldn't have the one thing she wanted. And so you wanted something in the score that was both beautiful, emotional, lush, but also had a sort of slight darkness to it and a melancholia.
Yeah, because she had like everything she wanted like on TV, but not the perfect home life in real life.
Yeah.
Well, like another element of the score is there's some very snappy, like rhythmic, like rat-a-tat music too, and I thought that worked really well with Aaron's famous dialogues and monologues, and also in the sense that you just kind of feel like Lucille thinking as like throughout the movie she's working through that like scene on the series, and you really feel her mind working. So can you talk about like composing?
That's good, because those scenes are probably weirdly the most complex and hardest to do. You think the big end shot that's like a 5-minute huge thematic, all the orchestra going, would be the really complicated one, and normally it would, but weirdly we nailed that. I nailed that really quickly, and Aaron was really happy. And it was the bits with Lucy thinking that were probably the most complex tone to get right. I did a lot of versions on that, a lot of back and forth with Aaron, because it was really hard to like, it was this thing of like trying to make the audience see these iconic scenes in a different light. Aaron didn't want to play them for laughs. He didn't want to play them for nostalgia. He wanted to play them so you're kind of realizing what Lucy is thinking and what she's going through to get those moments as powerful as they can be. And it's one of the most interesting things about scoring is sometimes you can be big and sometimes you've got to be subtle. And the subtle stuff is sometimes harder than the big stuff because you've got to get the tone just right. And that was one of those ones we did a lot of experimenting. We tried stuff and it was too overblown. It seemed too dramatic, or it seemed too inconsequential. And it's one of those things when you watch a movie, very few people ever understand the kind of all the sort of dramas behind the scenes of trying to get certain bits just right, so you don't even notice it on the process. And that was one that was complex. But then, for instance, the stuff that's more in the jazz idiom, that worked straight away. We instantly had this idea of trying to get more dynamics in the score, so it wasn't all orchestral. I love a richer score that takes you in different places, especially as we've got a stylistic device that is sending us forward with the sort of documentary style interviews of the writers as older characters. And it just felt the right thing to do. I wanted to keep in the world of the film. I didn't want to do anything too tricksy. I wanted to have an element of Cuban percussion in there with the congas, but I didn't want to overdo it because I didn't want to slant it towards Desi's world too much. And I wanted some neutrality. And the kind of the energy of that sort of percussive, it's like basically it's a sort of 5-minute sequence that's pretty much just drums and double bass and a bit of percussion, which is, it takes a long time to score that out to stop 6 minutes of drums not being boring. And so, it's kind of those weird things that, it's just trying to get the nuances and the changes and all that sort of stuff. So you just fly through it and don't think about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, last time we talked was last year when you did Travel Chicago 7 for Aaron, and you said like you met with him at a hotel like very early on, And then you didn't see him in person again because of COVID. So did you get to see him at all during this process?
No, I got to see Aaron. I mean, I got to see Aaron for like 3 minutes at the Oscars because we were there at Chicago 7 and I was in America. And obviously it's quite hard. It was quite hard to be in America. And so, and even the Oscars was weird because we were all like shoved in different
like
zones.
different booths, yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be like, I saw Aaron for about 3 minutes before he got whisked away to his zone. And yeah, and he was like, hey, we're shooting Ricardos next week. And I was like, really? Because I heard that they were starting soon, but is it really shooting next week? Because COVID and all these sort of things going on. And I didn't, like, I'd heard that they were starting shooting, but I didn't really believe anyone because basically people always say things are happening in films, you know, oh, we're going to be locked by this date, never going to be locked by that date. And they were shooting. So I was like, shit, better get busy. So literally after the Oscars, I stayed around Phil Lord's house, bizarrely, who you might know from popular movies such as Lego. Spider-Verse, yeah. And so I was trying to like just actually relax, and he had a nice big piano at his house. And so I was like, all right, I better actually do some work. So I spent quite a lot of time on that piano, trying to finish that theme off over there. But that's the only time I've seen Aaron. I haven't seen him since. It totally sucks.
Oh, wow. Well, fingers crossed on his next movie that you guys can see each other in person during the process. Fingers
crossed. We're meant to go for fish and chips. He wants to go for fish and chips in London.
There you go. Yeah.
And like Mockingbird's opening over here. So I promised I'd take him to a authentic fish and chip shop.
You got to do it.
The one I want to take him to, Masters Superfish on the Waterloo Road. If you ever come to London, just behind the old Vic, it's very good. Looks like it's shut, so it looks like it'll have to be the Happy Fryer on Theobald's Road.
Okay, so pro tip for anyone going to London.
Yeah, that's opposite the Warner Brothers office on Theobald's Road. If you want authentic fish and chip experience, the Happy Fryer's got a great logo of a little fish as well. So
awesome. Well, Daniel, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you back here in a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Joyce. See you a bit later.
See you later.